Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back with another episode of Kerbal Space Program. Working our way through the training, so we have done construction basics, we've done flight basics, we went a little extra on flight basics. It was about an hour-long episode. An hour-long episode is pretty good for Kerbal Space Program. I'm gonna definitely have to figure out ways of breaking things up if I'm going to make a longer term series for this. Anyways, so just like last episode, we're gonna do orbiting 101, but just like last episode, you need to just save everything you learned in the last episode in a new folder and start a new file for this. Welcome to Orbiting 101 Training Program. I'm Gene Kerman, and I'm going to teach you the basics of orbiting. I assume you've already done basic flight tutorials, and now you're ready to learn how to get around in space. If you haven't done them well, I hope you know what you're doing. Now, the one thing that I will say is that flying around in space is significantly more fuel efficient, but also a lot harder to hit a target because the targets are very small and space is very big. Orbiting is really nothing more than free falling. The only thing is that as you fall, you're moving so fast forward you actually miss the ground, because up here there's no atmosphere to slow you down. You will continue to free fall endlessly around the planet without having to use your engines. We're currently in a low, almost circular orbit around Kerbal. To get a better view of your situation, press the M key to go to the map view. The M key is way over on the other side of the keyboard. Why would you? I would never use that. I would click over here, but whatever. So we have a pretty high orbit here of almost 200 kilometers or 200,000 meters. This is the map view. Here you can see the ship's position right here. It says your velocity and your what is that? It's how high you are. It says altitude. That's the word, yeah. Hold the right click and move the mouse to look around to see the orbit from various angles. Also hovering over the icons on the map will display more information. Close the map view when you're ready. So, typically a top-down view is the easiest. Something that's very hard, if we were to skip ahead, is trying to get an orbit to rotate so you would go from north-south. That's a pretty difficult thing to do, pretty fuel expensive thing to do also. There are science for being in orbit over the North Pole. You can get science for doing that. You can get science for being over the South Pole type stuff. And typically you'll launch from somewhere around the middle of the planet and end up in an orbit nowhere near the North or South Pole. You get science for each type of continent. So there's a desert here. This might be grasslands or mountains, ocean. There's several different biomes. Anyways, that's all stuff for the future. Let's get back to orbiting 101. You can hover over the apoapsis and see the time it will take, T minus 4 minutes and 28 seconds, and the apoapsis is T minus 24 and 14 seconds. So that when you add that together, that is about a 40-minute orbit. If you subtract the 4 minutes here from the 24 minutes here, that's 20 minutes that go halfway around the planet, another 20 minutes to go full circle. Good, let's let's get practical now. I trust you already know the basic spacecraft controls. Up here they're very much the same, only that the lack of atmosphere makes the ship behave quite a bit differently. Because there's no drag slowing you down for every input you apply, you will have to apply an opposite one to come to a stop again. I'm going to remotely nudge your attitude, not altitude. There's two words right next to each other. One is called attitude, one is called altitude. Controls. Try to get the ship back under control afterwards. If you find yourself totally out of control, hit T to toggle SAS. Alright. So, he's gonna put us in a spin, and we're gonna try and adjust. Alright. So I'm in the spin. Let's see. What we want to do is just kind of... Are we making progress? He's got me... There we go. Slowing down. Slowing down. Slowing down. Having this percentage here actually could help a little bit. Now this is pretty bad. So this is why I said in the last episode you never really want to put anything in a roll. Doing this is using a lot of your monopropellant to start off with the rocket control system. And see, I'm hitting every single direction I can think of. Alright, there. And it's still kind of moving. Nicely done. Attitude control is essentially an essential skill for a spacecraft pilot. Master it and you'll be well on your way to becoming an exceptional pilot. You can try it again if you want, or you can press next to go through it. What I want to see is how much monopropellant did that use. Apparently it's been programmed to give me an infinite amount, because that would have used a lot. You only have 30 in the command pod. You pretty much have to have extra canisters of it. Honestly, you'd never use that. It's not worth it in any fashion to mess with that, unless you just absolutely don't want to toggle SAS on. Because SAS would fix all of that right then and there, keep you nice and smooth. There are some other situations where you'll get out of control and be in a tailspin, but usually at that point you're about to crash anyways, and SAS can't save you. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's have a look at the nav ball now. You'll probably seen the symbols on it. Here's what they mean. Prograde, retrograde. Vectors at the point they point towards and away from your velocity vector respectively. That is, it points to and away from where you're going. Okay, so prograde meaning you're going that direction. Retrograde means that's the opposite of that. You would aim towards your retrograde if you were trying to slow down. You would aim towards your prograde if you were trying to speed up. Speeding up will expand your orbit. Alright, radial in and radial out vectors, they point towards and away from the current orbiting body. Alright, so I didn't even know this. Maybe these symbols are new, maybe they're not. If we were orbiting Kerbal, I think. Yeah, that looks like Kerbal. And so if we just wanted for some reason to fly very poorly and just fly directly towards a planet, we could do that. Or if we wanted to fly directly away from a planet, we could do that. However, neither one of those are good options in as far as saving fuel. So I don't know when you'd actually use this and be doing the right things. And then we have normal and anti-normal vectors. They are perpendicular to the orbital plane. They point upwards and downwards respective to your orbital plane. Interesting. So what would you do with that is the question. Let's see. If this here, this is the way, this obviously is flying away from the planet. This would point you, maybe if you wanted a higher orbit, but didn't want to expand it, you might do that. I don't know. Maybe, I think you use these to rotate your orbit. Let's see. Okay, now let's try something a little more involved. Open your map again. What we want to do now is go through the basic maneuvers you'll need to know. Let's try rising the apoapsis first. Alright, well, the apoapsis is the highest point in an orbit, and it's indicated by the AP. It's one right here. The best place to raise your apoapsis is at the apoapsis. I've said that before, which is the lowest point of the orbit. It is, if you hover the mouse over it, the apoapsis, you'll see that we are going to reach it in a few minutes. No, we're going to reach it in like 35 minutes. Once there, we will fast phase prograde and burn. Select period to speed up time a little, so we can speed it up. Alright, so I think you can speed up by hitting period and comma. Okay, time is passing 5 times faster now than normal. We should be there in a few moments. What do you mean in a few moments? It's still going to be about 2 or 3 minutes. You can control the time warp and the period with the period and comma seeds, or you can click around the panel on the top left screen. Everything here is key maps, so you could play this game with heads-up controllers. Well, that's not what it's called. It's called a HOTOS thing. I think that stands for hands on the stick controllers, if you wanted to do that. Out of training though, you have to warp time down to 1 yourself so you don't go too fast. Okay, so I can just speed up and he's gonna automatically take us down. Good, we'll just speed this up quite a bit, because there's no point in you watching me do that. So he slowed me down a little bit to the apoapsis. Why we slowing down to the apoapsis, I thought we needed to burn prograde at the thing. What are we trying to do? We're trying to expand the apoapsis, are we not? Yeah. There we go. Finally. Good. Time to do our burn. Turn the ship to face the prograde vector. Remember that to activate the stability assistant, press T and do the prograde thing. Remember, the prograde looks like a circle with the little sticks in it. Doesn't look like. Alright, so that's the opposite of the prograde, and it's on the horizon. And the SAS turned on by itself. Okay, when we've now turned prograde, check SAS is engaged to keep you steady. Press the Z key to accelerate at full throttle. The rest of that, whatever that was, we're done. This is how you raise your apoapsis mode. While orbital maneuvers pretty much everything with orbital maneuvers, pretty much everything you do will affect the opposite side of the orbit. So to raise the highest point, the apoapsis, you thrust forward or prograde. At the lowest point, the apoapsis. Similarity to raise the apoapsis, thrust prograde at the apoapsis. So we're on our way to the apoapsis now, so let's do just that. Click next and I'll warp you over there quickly. So this is a more elliptical orbit. Now we're gonna try and spend some fuel to do a circular, get it back to a circular orbit. Now there isn't a lot of reason why you want to get a circular orbit that is very far away from the planet. This is almost 1,000,000 meters away from the planet. What you would want is a very elliptical orbit, one that gets very close to the planet and then one gets very far. Having a circular orbit would only be good for orbiting a planet, because then you can be a little bit off on your numbers when you're trying to dock with that ship, or if you want to have it have faster rotations. It may take a very long time to do one rotation of an elliptical orbit, where it would take only 20 minutes, as we saw. Anyways, back to the tutorial. Okay, here we are. Same as before. Turn your ship to face prograde. Well, I think it already is, and mind that it's probably turned the other way right now, so prograde vector may not be visible. What are you talking about? Yep. There. Having the symbol over the symbol and them both being yellow is not that helpful. In fact, the symbols in general are just not that unique. I don't know if these are the symbols on and have any similarity to what they use in real space agencies, but they probably need to fix that. Once you're faced in the right direction, fire it up those engines. So, same thing, we are now raising our apoapsis, making a more Nicely done. This is how you change the size of your orbit. This maneuver should come in handy in many situations. Now we'll look into changing your orbital inclination? Okay. Your orbital inclination, oh, that's a C, not a, that's a CL, not a D. I need this text bigger. Let me just reiterate. I need the text about half the screen because I'm watching this on a like 30-inch TV, but I'm 10 feet away, so reading text is hard. Now most people play with a monitor and that wouldn't be a problem. Anyways, your orbital inclination is the angle your orbit makes to Kerbal's equator, or whatever you're orbiting's equator. If you manage to maintain a reasonable amount of control so far, we should be in a nearly 0-degree inclination orbit. That is, even though we've changed the altitude of the orbit, it is still the same inclination as before. Changing the inclination is done by thrusting in 9-degree angles to your prograde vector. Okay, let's see. I think that would be this symbol. That seems to be about 90 degrees of prograde. On our present nearly equatorial orbit, prograde is due east. That means to increase our inclination. That means to increase our inclination so that our orbit takes us to higher latitudes. We have to burn towards the normal direction. Normal direction? Normal direction. What does that word mean? Okay, first of all, this whole sentence is a run-on sentence in my opinion. And then you put this word that I don't know what means. If that's normal, as in just the usual direction, there is no usual direction I know of. If that's normal, as in like a gnome, I don't know what a gnome is. If all that I just said makes your head spin, the navball once again comes in to the rescue. To change your orbital inclination, in this case, we just need to use the normal vector. Let's try this. Turn the ship to the normal vector direction and open the throttle. Notice how, as you burn north, maybe normal means north, the orbit starts to tilt up. Let's speed this up a little. So, what you want to do is watch it like this. And notice how it's starting to tilt. We're getting a higher inclination. And we're starting to go. That's how to change your orbital inclination. For these maneuvers, it's always better to do it at the slowest part of the orbit. So, if you don't have to spend as much delta V to turn. Delta V is kind of thrust. This also means inclination changes on larger orbits such as we have now take less fuel than the same inclination on lower orbit ones. I didn't know that. That's new to me. So you might want to get a bigger orbit to spin it around and then slow down to a smaller orbit. Also keep in mind that changing inclination doesn't necessarily mean accelerating to the north or south. It means accelerating on 90 equatorial orbit also happen to be north. Next, let's look at our last essential maneuver you need to learn, lowering your orbit. So, if you wanted to go the other direction and spin it so that this point was lower and this point was higher, you would, of course, instead of going for the triangle, it would have been better to go for the triangle with the lines in it. And you want to do this at the slowest point, which... where is the slowest point? The slowest point is usually about halfway in between the apoapsis and the apoapsis, because the way it works usually, although on a circular orbit it's hard to see, is you'll be going very fast towards the after halfway you'll start speeding up towards the apoapsis. You'll have such speed that you'll have an escape velocity from crashing into the planet. Not an escape orbit, but just an escape velocity, or orbital velocity, maybe is a better term to use it. Probably I used both of those phrases wrong. So you'll be very fast here as you gather speed up to your apoapsis. So I think it's about in the middle. Leave me a comment in the middle if that if the middle isn't about the slowest places. Maybe it is sometimes, and maybe it isn't. Anyways, let's move on. Lowering your apoapsis. As you can imagine, lowering your orbit's altitude is very much like raising it, only in reverse. Because there's no air up here, we can use our main engines to decelerate as well as accelerate, because nothing says that we have to be facing some direction or another. Also, since the orbit is nearly circular, we can just turn retrograde and do a burn at any time, so let's get to it. I didn't realize circular orbits really wouldn't affect it. When it is elliptical, it certainly affects it, and you certainly would want to burn retrograde at the apoapsis. So I would warp to the apoapsis here, typically, just to save fuel. But whatever, we'll do it here. And because we're doing it here, we're slowly lowering the apoapsis to the point of almost where we are. Because we're slowing down so much that we're never going to get higher than where we just were, basically. Now 70,000 meters is about where we want to go. That would be where you'd want to go if you wanted to land, and then use the atmosphere to do more. There you're on. But we're going in for what very possibly could be a crash landing. That is not a stable orbit at all. So we're going in hot. That's it. You're now on your way back. 20,000 meters is low enough to be in the atmosphere, so you're now in a re-entry course to Kerbal. Once you're below 60,000 meters, the atmosphere will start slowing the ship down, so it won't have enough velocity to rise back up again. Okay, so they're giving me some different numbers than what I remember doing. Maybe the numbers changed, maybe I was just doing it wrong. 20,000 meters is very low, and 60,000 meters they say is the thing. Listen to them, they probably know better than me. This is the end of the lesson. You can now continue doing maneuvers on your own. Don't forget to decouple the capsule and deploy the parachute. See you on the ground. Alright, so let's do this. Like last time, we've done our little ships. We can do a crew report for no science, I'm sure. Yep, no science. And let's just watch this. Let's see. If I decouple, the decoupler is here. And so that would just be the capsule that landed. But we do have landing things here, so we can land the landing gears. The landing gears are always weird because the first time you click them they don't work, and then you have to click them a second time. Notice this is a significantly smaller tank or something that it's landing on, so landing on these things will be a little bit difficult, but it shouldn't be too much. Let's go ahead. This is not how I'd want to. I can speed up as much as possible, and let's see if we can land this thing. We have fuel, so we want to use that fuel at some point. What I want to really do though is just be a little bit retrograde. Can't maneuver when you're warping. Forgot that. You can put a point here. That's going to be 16 minutes. Well, if we're gonna come in hot, I don't see any reason to not slow down some more. 11 minutes, that's too long. Let's see if we can come straight down. Up and the sun starts slowing down. Come on. Only really hit about the middle of the planet. You can't really have an orbit that is not orbiting a body. So that's about as much as I could have done. So let's again speed this up. So you've seen 3 episodes now of Kerbal Space Program. We will get back to construction and some of the other elements. This is the 3rd of the 4 or 5 very unique systems. It's not super different from the flying systems. It's the same keys, it's the same screens. It's just, are you dealing with an orbit or are you dealing with trying to get into an orbit? This is a very long game, Kerbal Space Program. It is the type of game that is great if you want to be an astronaut. It is great if you are an astronaut or interested in astronomy or flying. In a lot of ways, too, it's not the pilots and the astronauts that are calculating maneuvers they understand it, they learn it, and they know what is happening. But there are certainly rocket scientists that are doing the initial calculations for them, or computers. But this is also a game that is great for people that can only really afford one game or a few games a year, because you can certainly play this for a year straight and just build on your system. The whole concept here is you're going to have several flights in the process. You're going to have gain science, you're going to have astronauts everywhere, you're going to land on every single planet. We haven't even gotten to the moon yet, which is a major task. As major as it was for humans to get to the moon, it is just as major for you in this game to get to the moon. I'm trying to orient myself retrograde because I don't want the capsule to burn out in the atmosphere. We're totally out of fuel. You have this oxidizer stuff that has to work with the fuel, but that's about all it does. Alright, so now it's slowed down to 1 speed because we're below 70. Maybe that's why. We're going to start burning up. These things have no purpose. They can't do anything. At 1 speed I can start adjusting things. I can decouple and become lighter. And if I have to do that, because I will be coming in very fast, and now I'm facing the wrong direction, and that's not what you want, but that is just the aerodynamics of the situation. Let's launch our thing. Oh no. Oh no. I launched the thing too early. The parachute's burned up. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. We're coming in at 200 meters. That is far too much. That's far too fast. Far too fast. You want to be that. And that's what happens a lot of times. Let's see if we can zoom out and see the explosions. Well, here's the debris. It's about to crash. Smash. There's some more debris crashing. It's breaking apart. Unfortunately, we have lost our 3 brave pilots and our capsule by that mistake. And that's certainly going to happen a lot. A lot in this game. And here is your flight results. Sometimes when you get to this, when you crash, you can revert back to a previous time. I could load an autosave, but for the scenario it doesn't matter. Let's see. So here's your log. Crashed into the terrain. Every single piece here. You have liftoff, and then the first thing of note is your Jebediah Kerman, Bill Kerman, and Bob Kilman was killed. And then they died from the G-forces, which this is the G-force, I would bet. They just died from that. And then, or they just died from the impact itself. The command pod was crashed in the terrain, and everything attached to the crashed thing crashed into the plane. So not a super long log. It's just mentioning every single part that cost you money. Let's see. In scenario. So get used to crashing, get used to reverting. particularly as a YouTuber, I am not sure how I'm going to deal with that. I kinda need to show crashes, because if I start editing myself, it will be hours and hours of footage and work just wasted. So I don't think I'll be editing myself. I usually in my games don't edit myself much at all. Uh, but if you were just playing the game yourself, you would do a lot of quick saving, quick loading, and all of that. Oh, great. So next episode we start with science, and we can get into yet a new system. And then we're going to go to the moon, part 1 and part 2. We'll try docking, which is quite a difficult thing. And then an asteroid redirect mission, which is an interesting challenge. But that's the end of this episode, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Oh, look, he built a little moon castle. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment if you want to, and watch every second of my videos. All of that helps out. If you want to support me, there's 2 ways you can do that. One is clicking on my name, Rydo. On the right is a blue button that says support this channel. The other way is you can click on the Amazon.com affiliate link in the description. If you want to follow or friend me on practically any social media, including Steam and Battle.net, that information is also down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.